One thing I know for sure, my friend, for Jesus you just can't fake it. Who do you serve, King Jesus? Who do you need, King Jesus? Who do you love, King Jesus?
Well, it's Easter weekend, Bedhead Bible Study, number 53.
Are we living in sin? How do you think you're gonna make it? One thing I know for sure, my friends, Jesus, you just can't fake it. Who do you love?
You know, I believe in God because of Jesus, and I believe in Jesus because of the resurrection. I believe in the resurrection because of the disciples. Now, you and I can argue about the existence of God. A lot of people do. We can argue about the validity of the deity of Christ, or we can argue about the legitimacy of the scriptures. But the life and the death of each of the disciples becomes, for me, the greatest historical case for the resurrection. And the resurrection changes everything. Think about it. These men, one moment huddling together in fear, have an encounter with the resurrected Christ. And that one encounter changes them forever. Because ordinary men don't just die for a lie. And each of them, separately, with no way to easily contact the other, was killed or tortured, and none of them ever said, "Hey, stop, we made the whole thing up." And that's, to me, simply astonishing. So I always like to explore this and help you understand why this is such a big deal for me. I mean, think about how they died. If you look at the records, you realize James is the first apostle to be martyred. A guy named Herod Agrippa seized him when he was in Jerusalem in the year 42 and had James beheaded. Andrew, he preached the gospel in Turkey and in Greece and in Macedonia, and he was crucified at a place called Patras in the year 61, tied to an X-shaped cross after being scourged just like Jesus. And he hung there and he preached the gospel to people for 2 days before he finally died. Peter, we all know of Peter. He was martyred by Nero in the year 67. Most famously, he was crucified at his own request upside down out of reverence for Jesus, and they granted his request. Paul was beheaded the same day that Peter died, and he was beheaded outside the walls of Rome. Simon was crucified in Edessa in the year 67. Matthew preached in Africa, and he was martyred by the sword around the year 65 in Ethiopia. Thomas was stabbed to death in Mylapore, India in the year 74. Matthias, you remember him, he's the guy who replaced Judas Iscariot. He was crucified in the year 65. Jude was clubbed to death in the same year in Persia. James the Less, he had it rough. He went to Jerusalem and preached the gospel, and the religious leaders took him to the pinnacle of the temple, and they told him to renounce Jesus Christ before all the people who were gathered below. Instead of renouncing Christ, he proclaimed Christ and preached the gospel. Christ resurrected, and they cast him off the pinnacle of the temple. When he hit the ground, he was still alive, and a man stepped forward and smashed his head in with a club. Philip, he preached the gospel in Greece, and he was martyred in the city of Hierapolis in Persia in the year 62. And like Peter, he too was crucified upside down. Bartholomew, he had a bad, rough deal as well. He got skinned alive in Armenia in the year 72. The Apostle John was the only one not to be martyred, but in the year 95, he was taken prisoner in Ephesus and sent to trial in Rome, and he was sentenced to death, where he was boiled in oil before the Latin Gate. And miraculously, John survived, and he was exiled to the Isle of Patmos and was later freed, and he died of natural causes in Ephesus in the year 100 when he was an 88-year-old man. So this Easter, as every Easter, I'm compelled to look around me at all the arguments of people who stand against the existence of God, or the validity of Jesus Christ, or the authority of Scripture, and each one has their own theories. But to me, the resurrection has moved from theory to fact in my heart because of my own encounter with the resurrected Christ. I understand now how these men found a cause worth living and dying for. And it's their lives, their message, their deaths that solidify for me the truth of the resurrection, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the everlasting love of the Father. So may this Easter weekend bring each of you a life-changing encounter with the resurrected Jesus Christ.
Who do you want? talk about heaven, but we living in sin. How do you think you're gonna make it? One thing I know for sure, my friends, Jesus, you guys can't fake it.